Hey, everybody. Welcome to the 2:30 session here at the Words of Music Writers Conference. I'm Tad Bartlett. I'm the managing editor of the Peauxdunque Review. At Peauxdunque Review, we've been really honored to partner with Words and Music for the last 3 years now. I think we've been doing this, administering the Words and Music Writing Competition each year, which is just a joy for us to be a part of. And today, this afternoon, we're going to feature readings from the winners and runners-up in each of the categories from the 2021 Words and Music Writing Competition. And y'all are in for some fantastic words, which I think we all need on a day like today when we've been reminded just how little justice is in the world. We can turn to words and to each other, into community. I'd like to start with the short story competition. Our short story category this year was, our final round judge was Ravi Howard. Ravi is the author of 2 novels, Like Trees Walking and Driving the King. Ravi was a finalist for the Hemingway Foundation Pen Award and received the Ernest J. Gaines Award for Literary Excellence. His short fiction has appeared in Salon, Massachusetts Review, Soft Palm, Alabama Noir, and Gulf Coast. We were tremendously honored to have Ravi be part of our competition judging lineup this year. We've been very lucky to have really great quality judges to judge this work. Just before we start with the readings from the runner-up and then the winner, I'd like to mention we did have 8 stories that were honorable mentions in the category. Icarus Falling by Lee Forbes, Ixmoha, and A Trip to Valpo, 2 different stories that were honorable mentions by Mark Williams. Simple Care by Amina Gaucher, Junk by Sue Brennan, O Guillotine by Nikki Ummel, The Instagram Mothers by Kristen Sanders, and The Second Landing by Tej Ray. So I'd like to get to straight into the readings if we could. Our first reading will be by the runner-up in the short story category. A story called The Elephant's Foot by C.A. Munn. Ravi had this to say about The Elephant's Foot. The privacy of the mind is a terrifying thing. This line in The Elephant's Foot captures the protagonist's fear about the likely fallout of the truth he carries. The fiction is fueled by the power of disclosure in storytelling. We can consider how private disclosures made to the reader, if revealed, could shake the world of the story. The piece moves with the force of the protagonist's wondering and ours as invested readers. C.A. Munn is a current MFA playwright in the University of New Orleans Creative Writing Workshop. Their plays have been produced and received staged readings at the Mid-America Theater Conference and the UNO School of the Arts. For their poetry, they were a finalist for the International Literary Awards Rita Dove Prize in 2019, and for their fiction, they were a semifinalist for the American Short Fiction Halifax Ranch Prize in 2020. Their work as an interviewer has been published on the Plowshares blog, and their flash fiction is forthcoming at Screen Door Review. So without anything further, C.A. Munn with The Elephant's Foot.
Thank you. So I'll be starting this reading with the second section of my story. The main character, Lucas, is a young gay man living in New York City. He works at a library, and he recently found and met for the first time an older brother whom he never knew, and who lives in Brooklyn. So this is from The Elephant's Foot. Disasters are a subject of particular fascination to me. Not the natural sort, but the man-made variety. I find myself drawn to the more spectacular ways in which people manage to ruin the lives of others. The king of all such disasters is, of course, Chernobyl. The explosion and meltdown of the number 4 nuclear reactor of the Chernobyl power plant occurred in April 1986. The term meltdown is more literal than some might realize. Overheated nuclear fuel melted through the reactor vessel and mixed with molten concrete and sand to create corium, named for the part of the reactor where it is formed. This lava-like substance ate its way deep into the bowels of the building and sits there to this day. In December of 1986, a crew of liquidators, the workers tasked with cleaning up the site, were exploring the subterranean steam distribution corridor when they noticed a sudden spike in radiation levels on their dosimeters. They didn't dare peer into the chamber from which the dangerous radiation emanated. They pushed a camera around the corner to capture a photograph of its source. The image revealed a sickly, wrinkled blob a couple meters wide, oozing from the wall and creeping across the floor. Its appearance earned it the nickname the elephant's foot. It is the largest corium deposit in the world, and at the time of its discovery, it would have taken only 5 minutes to deliver a lethal dose of radiation. I imagine what would have happened if not for the dosimeters. One of the liquidators might have stepped around the corner and seen the elephant's foot with his own 2 eyes. Before he knew what was happening, his fate would be sealed. He would already be a condemned man. Gabe and I met the very next day for dinner, and the day after that for an evening stroll through Battery Park. Neither of us minded the long commutes. When it came time to say goodbye, I would linger, timid to ask to see him again. But Gabe wasn't the type for second guessing. He said we were making up for lost time. It should have been strange. I had never felt such a constant urge to be near another person, not even when I'd been blinded by teenage puppy love. But being around Gabe couldn't have felt more natural. And he looked at me in a way no one else ever had, with attentiveness and awe, as though he couldn't believe his good luck that I was real. I'm not sure when exactly my feelings for Gabe changed, if it was a change at all. Maybe I had felt that way from the start, too high on the rush of our new bond to recognize the feeling for what it was. Maybe I should have questioned why I wanted our greeting hugs to last longer, even though Gabe was generous with physical affection. He would sling an arm around my shoulders as we walked or knock his knee against mine when we sat. I often wondered how his fingers would feel laced with my own or touching my face, but I brushed those thoughts aside as odd flukes of imagination until I couldn't. It was a Friday, not 2 weeks from our initial meeting, when Gabe dropped in on me at work. I was reshelving books when I turned around and came face to face with my brother. I hadn't even heard him approach. "Gabe, what are you doing here?" I tried to keep my voice down. He raised his eyebrows in amusement. "You're not happy to see me?" "Of course I am." My cheeks warmed. You caught me by surprise." "I was in the neighborhood. Thought I'd swing by and wait for you to get off work." I couldn't help the smile tugging at my lips. "Are you going to watch me reshelve books for an hour?" "Oh yeah, scintillating entertainment." Then he leaned in close. Before I could draw back, his hand was on my face, tilting it towards him. "You've got a loose eyelash," he said, trying to pick it from my eye. His breath tickled my cheek. He was so close. My stomach knotted. I wish I could say I didn't understand what was happening, but I couldn't deny it. I wanted to cry. I felt betrayed by my body, my brain. I had the sense we were doing something wrong, innocent as it was. The bookcases sheltered us from view, but someone could come around the corner at any moment. I held my breath. "Got it," Gabe said, dropping his hand. I exhaled silently. "Make a wish." He held out his finger, my eyelash perched on the tip. I blew it away, but kept my mind blank. I was afraid of what wish it might conjure. Gabe was still examining me. For one second, I panicked that somehow I'd given myself away and he was about to rebuke me in disgust. "Your eyes are darker than mine," he said instead. "Have you noticed? They're hazel around the pupil." His quiet voice made the simple statement sound profoundly intimate. I nodded. "Yeah, our birth mother has hazel eyes." I felt ill. "We get this nose from her?" "No." I couldn't bring myself to mention the photos I'd seen of our father. Gabe finally leaned away. "You're lucky. Suits your face better. It's too big on me." "No, it's not." My face heated again. "You have a classic profile." Gabe laughed, then immediately stifled. "Tell Ellen that, would you? She's always complaining my nose gets in the way when we kiss." My stomach sank. I knew Gabe had a fiancée. I knew they kissed and did everything that relationship implied. It was stupid and wrong to be jealous. This was my brother. What the hell is wrong with me? "She wants to meet you, by the way." I glanced at Gabe in surprise. "She does?" "Of course. You're practically her brother, too." Then he smirked the way he did before every joke or facetious comment, as though he were delighted by his own wit. It was an oddly endearing habit. "Actually, I think she's jealous. Wants to know who the mystery man is I've been spending all my free time with." He elbowed me. I choked on my attempted chuckle. "So," said Gabe, "when are you free for dinner?" The corium in the elephant's foot is still hot. Radioactive decomposition gives off heat, and the elephant's foot will be decaying for lifetimes to come. It will take eons before it turns to lead. By 1996, 10 years after the disaster, the radiation had reduced to 1/10 of its original rate, enough that a researcher was able to examine the mass up close. But it still would have killed him if he stuck around. Even his brief visit had a permanent effect on him. Subatomic particles emitted from the unstable uranium isotopes bombarded his body. These high energy agents tear through atoms and molecules. They break the bonds of DNA itself. One look at the elephant's foot is all it takes. The change will be written in your chromosomes forever. I thought I knew what to expect from Ellen. She was an influencer with a popular Instagram and lifestyle blog that had become successful enough that she quit her day job at a boutique skincare store. I imagined meeting a Kylie Jenner wannabe. The woman you introduced me to was nothing like that. She was tall and bony with bushy dark hair pulled back from her face by a bandana. Her idiosyncratic outfit included what looked like thrifted items and chunky jewelry in the silver and turquoise variety. She kept an herb garden on their roof and greeted me with dirt-stained knees and a glowing smile. I could see in an instant why he loved her. I raised my hand to shake. She went in for a hug. Her arms were surprisingly strong. "Oh my God, Lucas, I've been so excited to meet you." I hugged back. "Me too." That was a lie, but only because I'd assumed I wouldn't like her. I was glad to be proven wrong, because my brother was going to marry her. She was going to be part of my life. I had decided that my errant feelings for Gabe were merely a phase, the byproduct of an emotional reunion. I had never had a sibling and didn't know what that bond was supposed to feel like. I had just gotten a little mixed up. Ellen was a warm hostess and an excellent cook. Over pan-seared scallops and balsamic-glazed Brussels sprouts, she regaled me with stories of her and Gabe's long courtship and incriminating tales from their undergrad days. I observed Gabe's reactions. His grin rarely left his face, and often he caught my eye with a conspiratorial twinkle in his own, as if to say, "Are you hearing this?" It made my heart pound. I wondered if this accidental attraction I felt was to Gabe's personality or his body. I wondered whether, if I understood the cause of my thoughts, I could rid myself of them. Maybe I would be repelled by the idea of actually being physical with him. I remembered his hand on my cheek, the warmth of his palm, his breath on my face. His mouth had been so close. I could almost taste it. The thought was far from disgusting. "Lucas," Ellen was holding the wine bottle towards me. "Refill?" I held her gaze. "Yes, thank you." I didn't feel guilty. It was only a thought after all. It couldn't hurt anyone. The privacy of the mind is a terrifying thing. My feelings for Gabe did not fade in the following weeks. I still fluttered every time I saw him. His simple touch made my chest ache. I lived to hear him laugh. Sometimes I indulged in the fantasy of an impossible future where Gabe returned my feelings and we didn't have to worry about the wider world. But I knew that even if by some twisted miracle Gabe felt the same, I could never expect him to abandon his fiancée and any chance at a normal life. I couldn't offer him any of the things Ellen could. I would ruin him. When I'd lost all hope of these feelings disappearing, I did the only thing I could: research. My affliction had a name: genetic sexual attraction, a condition affecting an unknown number of reunited blood relatives, unrecognized by the American Psychiatric Association, though there were articles on the phenomenon from multiple reputable news sources. Ironically, shared genetic material was the theorized cause of the attraction, as well as the basis for its taboo. This thing had taken root in me on a subcellular level. Reading the accounts of self-proclaimed sufferers, I felt only pity. Their descriptions of inexorable forces of attraction drawing them to their long-lost family members filled me with contempt. They were slaves to their emotions. I would not succumb like them. I would bury these thoughts so deep they would never come to light. Perhaps someday I could forget they ever existed. To contain the radioactive debris of Chernobyl, a steel and concrete shelter was hastily constructed over the number 4 reactor building. This structure became known as the sarcophagus. The word sarcophagus comes from the Greek for flesh eating. Indeed, anyone within the sarcophagus of Chernobyl would be consumed, irradiated by the 200 tons of corium that seeped into every crevice of the basement. But the sarcophagus was meant to be temporary. Its structural integrity was compromised by the fact that it rested on the decaying remnants of the building itself. Rainwater found its way inside and leached toxic waste into the earth. It was not a matter of if, but when it would collapse and spew more fallout into the atmosphere. In May, Ellen threw a pre-wedding party. According to Gabe, it was all for the gram, and Ellen was sparing no expense. I arrived at the party in a jacket and tie and immediately realized I was overdressed. The other guests were effortlessly cool in their suede and leather and their flat-brim hats, gathered around the granite-topped bar and tables laid with artful amuse-bouches. Gabe lit up when he spotted me, but dark bags shadowed his eyes. I wondered if he'd slept at all in the few days since I'd seen him. He embraced me warmly. For one guilty moment, I relished the scrape of his stubble against my neck. I missed the dress code memo, I murmured in his ear. Gabe laughed. I should have warned you. Here. He stepped back and pulled off my tie with a nonchalant motion that did something strange to my insides. To my relief, Gabe stayed by my side the whole evening. He proudly introduced me as his little brother, garnering some excited exclamations and curious looks from the guests. Besides that, he didn't have much to say to these people. As soon as he turned away, the corners of his mouth fell, his eyes dulled, and he drank a lot. Ellen flitted from group to group, taking photos, directing others to take photos. Gabe and I eventually found ourselves in the corner of the living room, observing the goings-on from a distance. He nudged my arm and slipped away down the hall, swiping a bottle of Jameson from the bar on the way. He entered the guest room and sat on the bed. I closed the door behind us. What's up? I asked, keeping my distance. Gabe took a swig straight from the bottle. Feel like we haven't had much one-on-one time lately. He patted the spot next to him. I sat warily. Gabe offered me the whiskey. I took a sip, only so he wouldn't be drinking alone. The warmth of his body was inviting, but I refused to close the gap between us. Won't you be missed? I asked to fill the silence. It's your party. Gabe snorted. It's not my party. He took the bottle back. Everything all right with you and Ellen? I prompted. Gabe looked like a deer in headlights. It was almost comical. Yeah, why? You look pretty tired. I'm fine, he insisted. But then he sagged. It's just the wedding and all this stuff leading up to it. He rubbed his face. Once Ellen gets an idea, it's full speed ahead. I mean, I admire her for it. She makes things happen. Gabe took another drink. He was quiet. Then, I don't have an excuse. The bags under his eyes stood out like bruises. His jaw hung slack as if he were too exhausted to close it. It hurt to look at him. For what? He chuckled bitterly. I'm marrying the woman I love. And I have an amazing little brother. He attempted a smile, but it died. I should be happy. I couldn't help myself. I laid my hand on his shoulder.
Thank you so much. That was great. And the story is fantastic. And everybody keep your eye out for issue 6 of Peauxdunque Review, which will be coming out before the end of the year. We'll be having all the winner and runner-up pieces and some of the honorable mentions as well will be in issue 6. So next we have the winner of the short story category this year. The story chosen by Ravi as the winner is Charity by D.P. Jannerson. Ravi notes regarding Charity. Charity shows how fierce urgency can power the situation and the pace of the writing. The story's events are matters of life and death, and the writer offers an insightful take on that idea. We learn of the characters and their circumstances quickly as the work balances acute and chronic circumstances as both, as both content and technique. The story reevaluates the standard ideas of giving and taking in a way that drives the action and invites contemplation. D.P. Jannerson is the author of The Women of Dauphine, which was a finalist in the fiction LGBTQ category of the 2019 Best Book Awards, and 2 books of poetry. His short pieces have gone viral with Bitch Media, received honors from publications like The Writer and So to Speak, and been nominated for a Pushcart Prize by the Flexible Persona. A trans, queer, and disabled writer, he lives in New Orleans with his wife and is currently shopping around a YA novel about the characters in Charity. Dev?
Hello. Hey, I'm really excited to read this. I will say I don't know how much my voice is like a 12-year-old girl's right now, but I trust in y'all's imagination. Charity. I didn't want to go to the stupid Carrera dinner in the first place. Everybody on the ground! The man has mud in his beard and holes in his t-shirt. Even without the gun, he wouldn't belong. Mom pulls me to the hardwood floor. My insulin pump pops out of my pocket when I land. Throughout the room, people drop in their tuxes and heels. The gunman grins. Very good. Now let's see some cash, you rich fucks. Cash? Mom whispers. She ignores the swearing. With Mr. Laughlin still on stage, our table is just us 3. Me, Mom, and Mr. Laughlin's son, Blake. He wants money? Shh. Blake is keeping still. Only the stage is lit up, so the gunman might not even see us back here. Let's start with you, and you. The man points the gun at people in the front, like it's a joke or like it's part of his hand. I see squares of light, guests sneakily checking their phones. I know what they'll see. No service. That was a selling point for this event. Hosted at a beautiful remote property not even a cell tower can disturb. Just hills and redwoods and nobody to hear you scream. 2 months ago, Mom blogged about my A1C. My doctor and Mom were excited because I was doing well with my sugar levels, even though nothing that bad ever happens when I don't. If my sugar's low, I get shaky and confused, and if it's high, I don't even notice unless it stays there a whole day. Then I get dizzy, maybe throw up. It's not fun, but it's not a disaster either. Mom wrote a post about how having a daughter with diabetes is the hardest job. I didn't know until it was too late. It went viral, but not like the clips we watch in homeroom. None of my friends saw it, but older people did. Turns out parents go online to talk about their kids' health problems like all the time. The invitation came addressed to the courageous mother of Ruth Martin. Cure Crew's quarterly fundraiser for, what else? The Cure. They only sent 2 passes, but it's not like Dad or Noah wanted to go. I didn't have a choice. In 7th grade English, I need 3 reasons for each argument. Usually I'm good at this, but when I tried to talk to Mom, I couldn't even explain one. Everyone's looking at me. It feels weird. Mom laughed. Oh, darling, when you grow up, you'll realize everyone feels weird all the time. She spent a month rehearsing her speech for tonight. She'll never give it. Everyone in this room, which they call the pavilion, is huddled on the ground with their table mates, like it's the end of the world. The gunman flips through a wallet. He hasn't talked to those of us in the back at all. I can't believe this is happening, Mom hisses. Where's that security team we saw down the hill? Mr. Laughlin leaps off the stage and runs. He is all motion, arms pinwheeling through the air. He gets to the front door and yanks the handle so hard he almost falls. It's locked. He's panting when he looks at the gunman. How is it locked? The gunman smiles, a slow, lazy smile, and ignores him. Mr. Laughlin stares for a moment, then sprints to the other door, the one leading to the rest of the building. We toured it earlier. The offices and first aid center and the demo room where Cure Crew's only diabetic employee showed us how to connect pump equipment with a mannequin. This door has a regular knob, but it's locked too. 10 minutes ago, Mr. Laughlin was yammering about how he'll always do what's right for Blake's health, whether Blake likes it or not. People were laughing. He was laughing. I'll never give up. Now he sinks to the floor in the dark audience. Hey. Mom and I look up, but Blake is only talking to me. His eyes are wide. There's a landline in my dad's office. You could call for help. Me? How? Behind you. I glance back. No doors on this wall, but there are rooms on the other side. I know because there's light shining through a white grate right behind us, which is where Blake's pointing. What is it, a heater or something? Not anymore. It's decorative. Even though I'm scared, hearing that word from a teenage boy makes me want to laugh. Mom and Blake are staring at me. Behind the grate, there's a hole that leads out of this room. We might be the only table next to an escape route, and I'm the smallest. I put my hands around the metal frame. Part of me hopes it won't come off and I'll have to stay with everyone. It lifts away. It's not even that heavy. I look back. The gunman is laughing and tossing credit cards into the audience. He's enjoying the spotlight, the one that was for Mr. Laughlin, who's back to swearing at his phone, trying to get a signal. Suddenly, the man raises the gun, points it toward the audience, and winks. People gasp and cry. I feel numb, like my heart and lips spent a night outside. The man lowers the weapon and opens a blue purse. Mom lets out a breath. I check my levels on my pump, and since they are fine, I tuck it back into my pocket. I peer through the square-shaped opening the grate covered. It's a tunnel, a little longer than I am, ending with another grate in another room. The front is small, but I'm smaller. Fine, I say. I sound like I might cry too, but I won't. When I pull myself out the other side, I see boots with the toes right in my face. The girl grabs my shoulder and pins me to the wall. The cuffs of her green flannel shirt scratch my neck. Her thick, dark hair falls in her face. She looks wild, like the kids who ask for money by the freeway. Crawling through the vent, she's quiet enough that people in the pavilion won't hear her, but I can hear nothing else. Creative, I'll give you that. Anyone following you? She cuts her eyes at the grate, then at me. She'll know if I'm lying. No, my mom sent me because, do you know what's going on? This man, I don't know how he got in, but he has a gun and I need a phone. I mean, the landline. Flannel girl sighs and lets me go. Forget the phone. Your mom will be fine. My feet move, but she puts an arm up to block me. Nope, you need to stay here. Or, shit, there's no one to guard you, so stay with me, I guess. She pulls me into the hall. I don't understand. And then I do. You're with him. You mean Pat? He's with me. She looks at the label on the nearest door, twists up her mouth, and keeps walking. He could hurt people. Everyone's scared. He's a distraction, and it had to be tonight. Most days, security stays in the building. But now they're at the bottom of the hill directing guests' cars up. Flannel girl keeps talking while she reads doors. And Pat volunteered. He was an actor. He loves this shit. Her smile falls. Plus, he's sick. He doesn't care if they take him in now. Anyway, the gun's not loaded. You can be wrong about that, can't you? Desperate times, kid. When we reach the door labeled first aid, she sighs with her whole body. Thank God. I glance back, like I could stare into the pavilion through the side door. The lock is on this side of the knob, which means I could run over and unlock it. Right now. I walk in after her. If I'm your prisoner, at least tell me who you are. I feel tough until Flannel Girl laughs. I mean, my twin sister and I, we're homeless now. Our mom kicked us out for smoking. Zero tolerance, she said. You mean cigarettes? No, something else, but it's legal now, and we should do what we want with our bodies, you know? I don't know exactly, but I bet Noah would. You'll understand when you're older. Hey, you can't be much older than me. Excuse you, kid. I'm 17. She's digging through the drawers. Even if I'm technically a prisoner, she doesn't have a weapon. I could run away. I should run away, right? How is this all they have? She whines, holding up a plastic bag of syringes. It's a freaking diabetes group. You're stealing needles? She needs them. My sister does. For drugs? No, smarty. For the same thing you do. My hand goes to my pump. Your sister has type 1? She doesn't answer, but I know I'm right. Why aren't you stealing insulin? I can get the crummy stuff from charities. I mean, real charities, not this country club. She shoves the door, but doesn't let it slam. Anyway, I doubt Cure Crew has it like stockpiled if these are their only needles. She uses syringes? She uses a pump, but it's been empty since yesterday, and no way does the shelter have that stuff. She'll be sick if we don't do something tonight. Back in the pavilion, I hear the gunman. He's found the microphone. I should run out there, lead everyone away, or at least tell them the gunman is probably not dangerous. Instead, I'm repeating, no way does the shelter have that stuff, in my head. I close my mouth. I open my mouth. They have pump equipment here. When Flannel Girl sees the mannequins with insulin pumps, it's like Christmas morning. Holy shit. And they show people how to change sets? Yeah, tonight they did. Which means they use new pieces every time. I bet. She opens a cabinet door. There are rows of boxes, infusion sets, reservoirs, continuous glucose monitors, everything a pump user needs. Yep, hello, hello. She starts stuffing as much as she can into the biggest box. The top half of her body disappears as she reaches back. I still don't get how you pulled this off. How'd you break in? How'd you even know this place was here? I can't see her face. Isn't it obvious? I used to be part of this whole scene. Like you. The girl must hear me leave, but she doesn't stop me. The last door says Logan Laughlin, President. There's a green lamp in the middle of the room, but it's dim. I feel for the light switch and wonder how long I should wait before calling for help. Long enough for her to get away, but not for Pat to scare someone to death. Looking for the phone? I scream. Mr. Laughlin is sitting behind his half-circle desk. There's a computer on one side of him, a TV on the other, and a bunch of framed pictures facing him. Maybe his kids, maybe Cure Crew events. And there's a maroon phone with a cord. He sees working. Way ahead of you, hon. The cops are on their way. My heart pounds in my ears. How long has he been here? Did he hear me with Flannel Girl? What if he knows I helped her? Mr. Laughlin rolls his eyes. Lord knows what happened to our guards down there. I don't know either, but I bet the girl does. Another friend, another distraction. I act innocent. How did you get out? Broke a window. He holds up his hand, shiny with red cuts. I realized that if that nut planned to shoot anyone, he'd have done it already. He laughs like a dog barking. It'll be fixed by our next fundraiser. Really, the most disturbing part is someone managed to hack my master lock. Better make some changes there. Is it unlocked now? Oh, sure. No one's checking the front door anymore, but our cavalry won't have to break any more glass. His lips turn up, and I hate him. I hate Logan Laughlin, how he thinks he's better than scared families and the actor gunman and confused kids trying their best. They're doing 2 minutes. The police? Of course. They're going to find her. I have to go to the bathroom. He sighs like there's gravel in his throat. You're a big girl. Can't you hold it? No. I run before he can say another word. You have to go, I whisper through the demo room doorway, breathing hard. But Flannel Girl isn't here anymore. Freeze! The word cuts through every wall, yelled with the confidence only adults in charge have. There's a hand on my shoulder. It's him. That's our cue, dear. Mr. Laughlin leads me to the side door, the one I never unlocked, even though I could have. Thank God, Mom exclaims when we step in. 2 officers are standing over Pat. The gun is gone, and he's calmer than he's been since he barged in. They lead him out the front toward the blinking cars and ambulance. Night's over, I'm afraid. Without the microphone, Mr. Laughlin has to raise his voice, but everyone hears. People head outside, except one policewoman who ducks into the hall toward all the other rooms I have been in tonight. One of Pat's escorts pulls something from his belt. It flashes in the blinking lights. A pair of handcuffs. Pat looks at them like he's not surprised and holds out his arm. No, I take a step, but Mom holds me back. Ruth, what's wrong? What can I say? Pat's homeless. The gun wasn't loaded. It wasn't his idea. She won't care. I bet you've had enough excitement for one day. Mom reaches out and ruffles my hair like I'm 5. Behind her, the woman who stayed comes back out. She nods at another officer who calls, all clear. They didn't find her. If I told them someone else was inside, they could probably still catch her. She'd be pulled out of the woods, maybe never see her sister again. If she even really has a sister. I open my mouth. I close my mouth. Mom doesn't notice when I don't talk all the way home. The end. That was Charity.
Thanks so much, Deb. That was great. I'm going to move along now to our next category, which is short story by a public high school student. Our final round judge for this category is Maurice Carlos Ruffin. Maurice is the author of his most recently, The Ones Who Don't Say They Love You, a short story collection which was published by One World Random House in August and was on the short list for the Ernest Gaines Award for Literary Excellence. His first book, the novel We Cast a Shadow, was a finalist for the PEN/Faulkner Award, the Dayton Literary Peace Prize, and the PEN America Open Book Prize. It was longlisted for the 2021 Dublin Literary Award, the Center for Fiction Prize, and the Aspen Words Literary Prize. Maurice, we've been lucky to have him as the final round judge for this category for all 3 years. He selected the story Snake People by Jessica Wang as the 2021 winner in this category and had this to say. He wrote to me, "Snake People is a richly allegorical hybrid prose poem about navigating otherness in a society that demands conformity. In a few short pages, the author brings us through several movements of anxiety, fracture, and a keen reckoning with the costs of assimilation. At the heart of the piece are a mother and daughter trying their best within an impossible situation." So after he sent that to me, then Maurice just texts me a very unguarded moment and said, "This story is excellent. The writer may be a genius." So I said, "Can I please add that to the announcement?" So that was his unguarded comment, Jessica. Jessica Wang is a 17-year-old from Long Island, New York. Her work has been nationally recognized by Scholastic Art and Writing, NCTE, Mission Inspired, and Susquehanna University. She has forthcoming writing in Blue Marble Review, and her work can be found in The Apprentice Writer. She's the founder of the youth literary magazine Ice Lolly Review, which accepts poetry, prose, and artwork from creators ages 12 to 26. In her free time, she enjoys listening to Japanese indie rock and rewatching Studio Ghibli films. Jessica, take it away.
Hi, thank you for having me. So I'll read my story. Snake People. For all the snake people, including the fractured ones. Birth. Contrary to popular belief, not all snakes lay eggs. Some snakes give birth to live young. When the snakelets are born, they are covered with a thin membrane. The snakelet then uses their egg tooth to rip out of the membrane and wriggle free. In the crevices of whitewashed hospital walls, entrenched between slivers of chestnut wood and sweat-soaked mattresses, I am born as a snake. I slide from mama's slick womb, my scales shiny and hidden underneath layers of fleshy pink baby skin. Mama cups my wet hair and promises that it's a good thing that I'm a snake. She breathes hot air in my face and whispers that snake people are smart and mysterious and will be rich one day. The year of the snake is always a good one. My mama is a snake person too. Eating. Snakes do not have the right kind of teeth to chew their food, so they must eat their catch whole. Their jaw is structured in such a way that allows the mouth to open wider than their own body in order to swallow their prey whole. I slither underneath the city lights, entangling my young body amongst the sea of yellow faces, amongst the flickering lampposts in the paved streets that reek of dead fish. Vendors sell golden candy floss morphed into dragons, cold watermelons carved into perfect circles. My mama buys me a figure of a mouse from a lady with dried prunes as lips. She presses the carved peach wood into the palm of my hand and gives me a toothy smile. 20 yuan a figurine. Prune lady compliments my red dress, and I eat her figurine as a thank you, biting into the hard, bitter surface and getting splinters in my teeth as I swallow down every single bit of it, the mouse shifting and splitting my stomach as a reminder. Dreams. According to a study directed by Giles Laurent, reptiles experience rapid eye movement when they sleep. This indicates they may be able to dream. In my dreams, I'm a dreamer. A person who presses figurines in their eyes and only sees the carvings and the gloss, not the hollowness beneath the surface. I lie in white clouds and catch paper cranes drifting on sticky lychee juice puddles and have tea with Beijing ladies in silk dresses. The rabbit on the moon gives me woven baskets with waxy milk sweets ingrained between their straw weaving. I swallow everything. All the tea, cranes, and sweet fox-eyed ladies. In my dreams, I pluck my home city from its roots and empty the skyscrapers, ancient palaces, and the malls that sell kawaii cat ears into the cave of my mouth. In my nightmares, I'm a descender. I fall from the white clouds, seep from the wooden slivers, past the smog lining the horizon, through the transparent rice paddy children, and back into Mama's cold arms. She smothers me in her cigarette butt-smelling grip, reality setting into my skin. I am Icarus if Icarus never had wings. When Mama tells me that we can't stay here anymore because of the cost, I punch her in the face, knuckles colliding against her jaw, purple on her cheek. We are snake people, beings meant to be rich and wear pretty dresses and hold rosy cherry blossom umbrellas underneath dove trees. We are porcelain dolls meant to be locked behind glass cases so young children can model after us. We do not struggle, we do not ache, we are perfect. Mama doesn't hit back. Instead, she tells me to pack my things. Environment. Snakes are found in forests, deserts, swamps, and grasslands. Many call underground burrows, or the spaces underneath rocks, homes. Snakes rarely change homes. Mama flies us to a small apartment sandwiched between pastel ice cream parlors that close at 6 p.m. sharp and brownie scouts whose mothers wear white Sunday blouses. Our new home smells like ashes and wood chips. Mama crushes her ear to the floor, her eyes dilated and wild as she drags me to the ground, telling me to do the same. She asks me if I can hear the freedom pulsing through the soil, the whisper of the land of dreams guiding us to riches. I tell her I can only hear the hiss of her snake tongue. Intelligence. Snakes are very sophisticated and smart creatures, and with enough willpower can be trained. Snakes learn very easily and are able to advance by learning trained behaviors. In the playground, amongst the plastic slides where children eat salty goldfish crackers and drink fruity Capri Suns, I learned more about snake people. Blonde children with blue faded overalls and red Cheerio hairbands tell me that snake people are hard workers but not good drivers. They tell me their own daddies and mommies cry clear tears at night because they fear that the snake people are in their own houses. Yellow bellies slithering on the kitchen floor and tails rattling against blue china plates, poised and ready to steal their jobs. America is no place for snake people, they tell me. I listen and take notes with Crayolas and computer paper, scribbling sketches of curvy figures and brown snake eyes. I want to learn more about my kind, the mysterious snake people that will be very rich one day. My mama doesn't care about this new information. She tears up my notes and breaks my crayons, and then drums her fingers on the coffee table, muttering to herself as she cries. Her tears smell like summer rain and salty fish. That said, it is important to note that not all snakes can be trained. Later, Mama tells me that I can tell the white children and all their daddies and mommies to go fuck themselves. Emotion. While snakes cannot feel love, they do have basic emotions. Snakes can be afraid and display hostile behaviors. Some pet owners even claim that snakes can feel sad or even lonely. I hear Mama scream one night, her small choked gasps slipping through the cracks of her shut door. I know she is crying because of blonde children and their Lunchable snacks, and white parents look at her because of the way her snake tongue speaks. I know her body screws into herself as she aches for something she will never gain. She's hungry, and she will always be hungry. Instead of comforting her, I expose my soft stomach in front of the bedroom mirror and press my hands onto the cool glass. Snake people do not belong here. Mama does not belong here. I do not ache. I do not crack. I feel nothing. Adaptation. Snakes are good at adapting to new environments. They become accustomed to a new habitat or diet easily and can adapt by changing their characteristics. Example, growing longer, relying more on their sense of smell, changing colors. One day, when Mama isn't home, I dye my hair blonde in front of my bedroom mirror. It has taken 6 years, 3 months, and 14 days for me to fully morph, to fully blend my colors with the pastel ice cream parlors, Sunday blouses, and the sticky red, white, and blue ice lollies that define this town. My black hair stings, tainted yellowness soaking into my roots. The wooden mouse in my stomach finally disintegrates. Wet wood decomposes in sour acid, and the splinters in my teeth vanish. My snake body blisters and scabs and flakes in front of the mirror, skin splitting like tangerine peels as I shed off patches of yellow, rinds of golden dried flesh drifting from my bones. I am reborn that day, sliding out of the dead husk of my previous skin and into the world as a different creature with blonde hair and pale skin. I am finally free in this free land. Shedding, the molting of the skin that occurs regularly in snakes. This is when old skin is outgrown. Snakes will rub against rough surfaces to shed their skin. I no longer talk to Mama, no longer cling to her and press goodnight kisses to her cheek. Sometimes I still see her, dragging her snake body through the front door just as the sun kisses the sky. She is not the same. My Mama is split, porcelain fractured into two, her mind floating in an eastern city, forever drifting amongst the flickering lights as her body slowly breaks down into hollowness and aches for something she will never gain. Unlike her, I am whole. Some nights I wonder when the time will come for Mama to shed her own skin, because she's a snake person, and all snake people need to shed their skin eventually. But I wonder if she actually wants to peel and morph, if she actually wants to rub her back raw against the whitewashed walls of my schoolyard until every bit of her is gone, until her body sheds a corpse of her past life. Because Mama's proud of being a snake person, proud of her heritage, but not proud that she lost it. But I hope Mama knows that dead limbs will eventually set in, and past flesh will eventually rot, and one day they'll take over her, permanently yellowing her skin and blackening her hair, and preventing her from ever becoming America's favorite. I don't know if I pity or envy her. Thank you.
Thank you, Jessica. That's just fantastic. I'm really excited that was our winner, and I'm really excited that that's going to be in Peauxdunque Review. Our next category that we're going to go to is our poetry category. The 2021 poetry category final round judge was Amy Nejukamatatil. Amy is the author of World of Wonders in Praise of Fireflies, Whale Sharks, and Other Astonishments, which was a finalist for the Kirkus Prize in Nonfiction and recently named the Barnes & Noble Book of the Year. Amy is also the author of 4 books of poetry and is poetry editor of Sierra, the national magazine of the Sierra Club. Awards for her writing include a fellowship from the Mississippi Arts Council, Mississippi Institute of Arts and Letters Award for Poetry, National Endowment of the Arts, and the Guggenheim Foundation. Amy is a professor of English and creative writing at University of Mississippi's MFA program. There were 5 poems that were selected as honorable mentions in the poetry category: New Arrivals by Ruby Hanson Murray, The Water's Running Free and It's Waiting There for You by Corey Wells, The Memory Ward at San Sebastian, and The Fig Tree at Dauphin Street Speaks, 2 poems by Nikki Hummel, and Groundhog Day number 143 by Naomi Crenshaw. Amy selected 2 equal runners up. The first one we'll hear is Villanelle of Her Absence by Andy Young. Amy had this to say about this piece. Right from the first line, I was destroyed by its vulnerability and insistence for connection with a lost mother. A gut punch of a poem full of love and loss, and ultimately a bright lure of hope for a future remade, never to be the same, but with a glimmer of a promise that this too is also love. Andy Young is the author of 4 chapbooks, including most recently John Swenson Dynamicron from Dancing Girl Press, as well as a full-length poetry collection, All Night It Is Morning, put out by Dialogos Press in 2014. She teaches at the New Orleans Center for Creative Arts. Her work has recently appeared or is forthcoming in the Southern Review, Pank, the Journal of the American Medical Association, and the Cortland Review. Andy is not able to be with us today, but her runner-up poem, Villanelle of Her Absence, will be read by conference director Megan. Are you ready?
Mm-hmm. Sure
Megan
am.
Holt.
All right. Villanelle of Her Absence. I keep on forgetting my mother is dead. The fact is sealed, a shard in a vitrine. Loss sews me up with its surgical threads. I almost sent her a pic of the kids hugging the dog in the sun, their sweet grins. I keep on forgetting my mother is dead. So I send it to my sister. Try to get out of bed. Light a candle in front of her picture again. I'm lost, breaking at the sutured threads. Which saint for students? Which for staying fed? She knew the saints, more like friends than religion. I keep on forgetting my mother is dead, until birthdays, Thanksgiving. I'll dread every time she can no longer be in. Her loss, the last gossamer thread of the time on earth she had to spend with us. Why didn't I pay attention? I'll keep on, forgetting my mother is dead. Loss is remaking me, cloth, filling, thread. Thank you, Andy.
Thank you, Megan, for reading that, and thank you, Andy, for writing that. Just an exquisite poem. The next runner-up that Amy chose was Embodiment by Nicole M.K. Eiden. Amy writes of Embodiment, "What a gem. I adored the description of seeking to name a bird and all the implications of various losses weighing on that too. How they push the poem forward from the unforgettable image of a singular braid and back to birds in flight. This poem chronicles and tries to make sense of loss without flinching, and succeeds." Nicole M.K. Eiden is a writer and baker. Her poem, Mortgage, appeared in the 2019 New Poetry from the Midwest and won third place in the 2016 Women's National Book Association Writing Contest. Kirkus Reviews selected her debut collection, I Am One of You, from Mississippi Sound Publishing, as a featured book in its indie category. Originally from Ohio, Nicole co-owns Windowsill Pies, a Southern-style pie and tart company in New Orleans, where she lives with her husband and daughter. So this is Nicole with Embodiment, and also, I imagine, a selection of a few other poems. Nicole?
Thank you, Tad. It is a real special pleasure to stop rolling pie a little early on the busiest week of the year to get to read poems. So thank you. First one I'm going to read is the one that was selected by Amy, Embodiment. Embodiment. To be a girl's braid, pre-wind, wound tight for the day, tied down and ribboned, proclaims a readiness to get to work, a desire to master naming. Covering the lagoon, green-headed birds float with their brown companions. I don't say Anas Platarinkos because I don't know the Latin, but when I encounter their beauty, I still label mallard. To identify accurately has established merit. Thank God for doctors. Yes, learn to name, but do not stay. To encounter what is beyond a diagnosis, chronic myelogenous leukemia, is to walk the gravel next to who is in pain. Last week, 2 women with 5th graders enter hospice. 4 days ago, Pavel was murdered on the bit of grass between his new house and the street. Tonight, on my drive home from the bakery, my mother calls to say the cousin who long ago showed me how to climb a sand pile has had a heart attack, has died. He is 2 years younger than I am. His twinkling wife and 6 kids must face his woodworking tools, his unfinished business, his unfinished projects. Funerals of both mothers stream online. A friend texts the name of each familiar song as it comes, texts a play-by-play of tender eulogy jokes, putting me there as I roll out pie, help customers make change. Back to work from Pavel's funeral, my business partner grasps for words to explain the walk from the church to the street with Pavel's friends, his husband. She says, tying her apron, "Now I understand the jazz funeral in my body." Everything we know to name comes in first through the senses. And what are we here for, if not to walk the gravel path next to hurt, next to who is excluded? If your belly is full, give the best. Become a keyless gate. if your belly is full or empty. Untether from your own classifications. Not for me, smarter than, addicted. Unloosen what has braided you. Leave behind even the keyless gate. Dance through the open field as unencumbered bird, then as air ongoing. I am going to read the other the other poem that was selected to be in Peauxdunque in the issue 6. And I wrote this poem a bit ago. I think it's a good one for the end of the year. So we're finishing up 2021 and looking to a new year. When people tell you life is work, do listen and know there is always the time at the table, carving back to show what is there. But notice also who travels with your hand as it uncovers the wood, the words, mystery. The bird flees south, the leaves swirl north. Your body is science. You have researched the dark matter of inception. You believe the stars blow out black hole. Mystery does not hide in these explanations. It is loud in the moving from one ground to a colder one and then back again to spring. All along, this sibling of science lays bare in the minute creased between your life and that of your parents, between your life and that of your child. And on this winter day, this new year, be reassured that your mind continues to deduce, but more determinedly, be delighted that this same mind is made, remade, to hold mystery, a speckled enamel pot surrounded by fire. And I am going to just read one more. I like to read this one because it has a little more levity, I think, than some of my other work. And I wrote this when I think of myself as a kid when I wrote this, but it was a long time ago. My blank white bumper sticker. Still on my car now, I like leaving things the way they happen. Rain seeped through plastic, smeared the words blank. You need age to arrive. You cannot just create a diner in 2012, paint it shine to reflect the sun and everything else. Expect the street to believe it is 60 years old. Detail. I feared lockjaw, the randomness of things. A brush with rusty screw on the seesaw. Fatal mouth peanut butter freeze up. Detail. When I was 8, my hair was straight. I turned 13, agitated hair looped up in my blind spot, now tighter after tighter, curl in motion tells every woman at the Xerox store my state, constantly searching for a pen. Detail. I played on the Dodgers, red shirt T-ball, shortstop between pinpoint positions of second. Third, make a note. Detail. When I'm asked to be there at 7, I say 7, think 7, I'll arrive. I can't say my alarm clock is accurate. I've been compared to it. Measure last minutes before being where? With elastic, stretch around all the time you need to get there, preferably with your hair combed. Detail, I wonder about the electrical lineman I met in the nursing home. How he felt supplying energy all over Morgan County for its very first time. From those poles, his delicate fingers touched electricity. Lights glowed from each house. He surveyed his work from 100 feet up. Detail. The Nile River is 4,258 miles long. Who measures the longest river in the world? With what do they measure? The length a shadow casts across the lawn. Divide or multiply by. Arrive at height of building. I want to hold the wrinkle of my hand, look back years and remember the shovel. I want to be the pole, run currents directly to the skillet. I want to be a hammer and pound, make noise, see where my energy goes. A blacksmith has the horseshoes to prove his work. Thank you so much for the opportunity to read.
Thank you, Nicole. All right, our final selection from the poetry category, our set of poems from the poetry category, will be coming from the writer of the poem that Amy selected as the winner. That poem is The Dream of Light by Benjamin Morris. Amy said this about The Dream of Light: "This poem is a burst of dynamite. We are swirled with an explosion of curve and brushstroke, and the carefully tended drop lines make the reader feel we are witnessing the creation of the painting and the poem, remarkably difficult to pull off in the same poem. This poem calls upon the strength of ancestors while praising what makes us unique, what makes us human and alive." A native of Mississippi, Benjamin Morris is a poet, writer, and researcher whose work appears in the United States and Europe. He's the author of Coronary, Hattiesburg, Mississippi, A History of the Hub City, and Ecotone. His writing appears in such venues as the Oxford American, the Southern Review, the Los Angeles Review of Books, the Guardian, and the Scottish Review of Books. Among other honors, he has received a Pushcart nomination, the Academy of American Poets Prize from Duke University, and the Chancellor's Medal for Poetry from the University of Cambridge, where he earned his PhD. His work has received 2 poetry fellowships from the Mississippi Arts Commission, research fellowships from Tulane University, and a residency from a studio in the woods in New Orleans, where he lives. I think Ben is going to read a selection of poems before he reads The Dream of Light. Looking forward to hearing all of them. Ben?
Hey, thank you so much for those kind words. That's got to be some other guy that you're talking about, right? I don't recognize him. But thank you to Megan. Thank you to Tad, to Amy, whose book, Oceanic, is one of my absolute favorites in a long time. Just adore that book. And thank you to everybody who makes the festival happen. It's a lot of hard work. And the other readers this afternoon, it is a privilege to be here with you. Before I read, I just have a couple quick things to say. First of all, how surprised I still am. Usually I get sort of second, third, or tied for third in these things, if anything at all. I'm serious about that. But wonderful as they are, moments like these, they make you want to be a better poet, to work harder, to read more, and to pay closer and better attention as we move through the world. I am a firm believer that we never actually make it in poetry, that poetry, like all writing, is a lifelong apprenticeship, and that the danger of resting on any laurels that you might acquire is that you crush them. This is why moments like this are so humbling, is because they set the bar even higher. But thank you, like everyone here, could not be more grateful for the encouragement along the path. I want to say something blindingly obvious. Reading changes lives. We know this, but it is so easy to lose sight of the power of this truth when we are under no persecution or denial or prevention from reading. If you heard Clint Smith in his amazing keynote last night, you heard a profound exploration of just how much more work there is to do to bring justice, to restore hope in this inequitable world. Today's verdict is proof of that. But there is hope. And here in Louisiana, organizations like One Book and Louisiana Books to Prisoners are bringing empowerment and education through books and literacy programs to men and women incarcerated across the state. I am so grateful to be able to return some of the prize money from this award today to their work, to remember and to encourage these men and women who hunger and thirst every day for hope and for restitution. So thank you to both of those organizations for their work. The poem that brought us together today was inspired by a Walter Anderson painting. And because Megan and Tad graciously offered me an extra minute, I wanted to bring one or two other Walter poems as well. A couple years ago, I was very grateful to the Walter Anderson Museum for hosting me on a miniature, very, very tiny residency. This was back in 2013. If you have not been to the museum and you live anywhere near it in the Gulf South, cancel all of your holiday plans and go. Just go. You'll find out when you get there why. It is extraordinary. They have thousands of his works. It is really, really something else. So I wanted to read two, and then the last one. The first one is called 7 Types of Line, and it comes from the theory by the Mexican painter Adolfo Besmagard, who Walter Anderson absolutely adored. Sorry, my cat's on the keyboard. That's what cats do. She threatens to imperil us all. Besmagard's theory was that there were 7 types of line. There's a spiral, a curve, a zigzag, and so forth. And Anderson was very, very inspired by this particular theory. It's all over his work. And Anderson's obsession with line, as we know, is not limited to painters. So let me get the cat. Oh, come here, sweetie. She's mad at me because she sprained her paw and I'm not letting her outside. So we are on the mend over here. Okay. 7 types of line. The first line is the line cast out over the water, vanishing at the far point of the horizon. The second line curves in the middle like a bow, bending to receive the force that acts upon it. The third line emerges as the first, travels the same path, but as it reaches maturity, turns and punctures itself in the back. The fourth line is the line of melody, borne aloft by a river of plains into which it dives, preys, and surfaces as a sleek black water bird, returning with wriggling in its mouth. The fifth line shoots up from the ground and arcs over the grass to form a canopy. On it may be hung a swing set, a pane of glass, or a shadow. This line is not to be trusted. The sixth line has not been seen in years. Its last recorded sighting observed its ashen pallor and fraying upon its tail. The seventh line curls inward towards itself. Taken between thumb and forefinger, it will unfurl as a tongue unveiling a word, until it glimpses itself in a mirror, sees the shadow of the first line forming, and so startled, turns and disappears. The next poem is from an early sketch by Walter Anderson entitled Red Wings. Sorry, somebody wants to sit on the poems, performing her supreme duty as cat. Second poem is called How to Build a Bird. And Anderson did a sketch of red wings, which are a common Gulf bird, in around 1955. And this is inspired by that particular sketch. Start with a line. Crooked like a branch of oak, but still straight enough for a frame. Let that line waver, hang in the rear of the sky like a half-formed thought. Let it rock left and right, unsure, unsteady, as out of the line grow wings, a wedge of a beak, the dim glimpse of a tail. Add meat. Let swell a belly and a breast, the head receive its heft, weave muscle around the bone, and let the wind tremble with what there soars upon it, with what, as it lands, plumes its tail to say that yes, it has arrived, yes, its feet are firm, that beneath its furrowed brow lies the keen and angled eye of a knife thrown into the wall of the sky. The last poem that I'll read is The Dream of Light. And I only want to say one thing about this before reading. This poem is 8 years old. If you have work you still believe in, get it out there. Some seeds may take nearly a decade to sprout, but under the right conditions, Sprout they will. So thank you all so much. Thank you, Tad, Megan. Thank you to the festival and to Amy. This is called The Dream of Light. And if my dear sweet cat will let me read it, it would be an honor to read it for you. The Dream of Light. This is inspired by Walter Anderson's sketch Seahorses from about 1960. And Candace, thank you so much, Candace, for putting that up. Okay. She is born in a sketch, a curl and a flourish, a swirl flown off the brush. The title lies. It is not 10 he is painting, but one that grows slowly as she swims across the page, swallowing ink like krill. First her tail with its ridges and spines, then her wings, their textures and bright bone. By the time she is grown, dripping with the darkness of the deep, the ghosts of her former lives littering her path, she has woken into a dream of color, a flood of golden light so radiant it draws the shade near to her in worship, then dismisses it swiftly away, asking as she goes, who among us has never wanted to flare into this world like a nova, our skin glowing through the depths of night, inhaling the soaring dark, to breathe it out again as the wild and untamable surface of the sun. Thank you so much.
Great. Thank you, Ben. And thank you for your words before your poems too. That was, I think, very welcome and well needed encouragement for all of us. Things for us to remember. Our next category is really my favorite category in the competition. I mean, short story writers, I love you. Poets, I love you. CNF writers, I love you too. But this is the category that really ices the cake for us at Peauxdunque Review and getting to be a part of this competition, and that's the Beyond the Bars category. The Beyond the Bars category is a free entry competition for writers of any genre who are incarcerated juveniles anywhere in the country. And we've had a number of really fantastic judges for this category. This year, the final round judge was Stacy Balkan. Stacy is the author of Sweet Bitter and co-editor of Violette and Wing, an anthology of domestic fabulous poetry. She was the winner of the 2019 New South Writing Contest and Terrain.org's 10th annual contest. Her work has appeared in Best New Poets 2018, Mississippi Review, The Rumpus, and several other anthologies and journals. Stacy holds an MFA from Fresno State and teaches creative writing online at the Poetry Barn and the Loft. Stacy selected the poem This Kid by Mason Hyde as the 2021 winner in the Beyond the Bars category. Stacy wrote this about Mason's poem. This kid is an incredibly powerful poem. Through detailed imagery and a driving rhythm, this kid tells a story of living with ghosts. What happens to a young person who's lost everything and everyone? Who do we, any of us, turn to when we're alone? Equally vulnerable and universal, this poem asks such questions through intimate, rhyme-driven stanzas that detail a difficult coming of age. The kid, who is revealed to be our speaker, has come from a bloodline full of trouble. He doesn't know how to pray, yet still struggles to honor the voices of everyone he has lost. Riddled with guilt and sleepless nights, how can the kid, this kid, or anyone move forward from here? This kid is a courageous act of creativity and persistence, and Stacy says she's honored to award it this year's Beyond the Bars prize. So we have with us Mason Hyde, the author of This Kid, and I'm going to turn it over to Candace and to Mason to hear Mason's poem.
Oh, that's small. I can't even read that. All right. Do I start? Okay. Let me tell you a story about a kid who knew everybody but still felt he had no friends. A kid who was scared of everything but told everyone he had no fears. A kid whose life was rough, so he had to pretend, but pretending didn't do him any good. Pretending had him looking like a fool, pretending he had him hooked on drugs, pretending had him stealing out of cars just so he could have food. This kid was tough. Being tough didn't help his heart. This kid grew up without a dad, but that was just the start. This kid lost his mom before the age of 14. He didn't know how to cope with the pain, so he started smoking weed. He thought drugs could help ease the pain. He thought about overdosing. He could solve everything in between. This kid wanted to be the best, but he kept putting himself down because he was depressed. This kid was surrounded by ghosts, though it wasn't Halloween, and this kid was fighting demons while begging God to help him please. This kid doesn't know how to pray, but every night he's on his knees. This kid was told crime made him weak, so instead he started fighting and hitting licks. This kid just wanted a family, so he turned to the streets and started running with the Crips. There was not a thing he wouldn't do for his clique. He knew if he ever told, his body would be found inside a ditch. Ever since that day, he was determined not to be a snitch. This kid was born inside the struggle, a family full of felons and a bloodline full of trouble. Every day this kid woke up, he had to find a new hustle. Every day on his way to school, he would stop at the graveyard to hang out with all his brothers. They may have been cold at night, but they had dirt for their covers. Where this kid is from, the police are corrupt. This kid watched his best friend get murdered over a lunch table and a couple bucks. The police know who did it, but act like they didn't because this kid was labeled as a thug. Where this kid is from, there's nothing but darkness and no love. No one has ever helped this kid, so he gets it out the mud. This kid's surrounded by violence and drugs. There's nobody this kid has ever loved. This kid wishes he knew how to describe his pain, but all he can say is life feels like one big terrible dream. This kid knows he could have prevented his mother's death. If he would have just gone home, she wouldn't have overdosed on crystal meth. This kid can't even sleep at night. There's so many people dead, and he still hears the voices and can't get the images of the dead bodies out of his head. Don't tell nobody, but this kid kind of reminds me of me. Everything I said in the story is true. You may ask, how can that be? I tell you how, this kid is me.
Thank you, Mason. I'm glad that you joined us and read that. That is fantastic, and thank you for reading it. You did great writing it. You did great reading it, and we feel great that we're going to be publishing it too. So thanks so much, Mason. That was awesome. Our next category, I think this is our final category. It is our creative nonfiction category. Our final round judge was Elizabeth Mickey Brina. Elizabeth's memoir and debut book, Speak Okinawa, was published in February of 2021 by Knopf Doubleday Press. Elizabeth's work has appeared in The Sun, River Teeth, Lit Hub, and Gulf Coast Magazine, among others. She currently lives and teaches in New Orleans. She chose two pieces as honorable mentions in the creative nonfiction category: Telephone Maelstrom by Stephen Polikoff and I Remember Everything by Nikki Ummel, if you're thinking you heard Nikki Ummel's name as honorable mentions in the short story category and the poetry category too, you weren't mishearing that. Nikki turned in great work all across the competition. So Elizabeth selected the piece Night Music by Maria Carrera as the runner-up. Elizabeth noted, "The secrets revealed in this essay are dark and terrible. But just as the author bravely attempts to cope and protect herself with music, she also protects the reader with delicate lyricism and striking experimentation with form and point of view." Maria Carrera was born in Washington, D.C. and kept a diary at age 6. Pursuing English literature, she earned a BA at E&H College in Virginia and an MA at CU Boulder, then went into theater. She lives in San Diego, where she stage managed at the Old Globe, taught Alexander Technique to actors training at USD and UCSD, and retired. Elizabeth, I'm going to turn this over to you to hear from Night Music.
Hello, thank you, Tad. Thank you for inviting me, everyone at Words and Music. It's an honor to be with you today. And thank you to Elizabeth Mickey Brina, the final round judge for my category. And a special thanks to the editors of the Peauxdunque Review for choosing to publish my story in issue number 6. My personal essay is called Night Music. I wrote it something like a concerto, where the third-person narrator is the orchestra and the first-person voice is the soloist. It's long on the long side, so I cut it down to about half its length. Here is a little night music. She was no Mozart, though she longed to play as he played, plucking music out of thin air like fruit from his private orchard. He improvised cadenzas joyfully, while she dreaded that horrifying moment when the orchestra leapt into caesura and in the silence expected fireworks from the solo voice. For a miserable eternity, her paralyzed hands flapped on the keys like injured birds. Maybe she froze because she wasn't used to being heard. As the youngest of 4 children, her voice was ornamental. She mostly listened, hunching her shoulders and tensing her lips to smile when she had to smile. I never wanted to be born. Mama was cruel to push me out of her womb into the noisy glare. Or was that another memory of my brother's abuse? I remembered the early ones in fragments like snatches of a lost tune, screaming in the cold as the sheet went away, suffocating while he bounced me. He drove his knuckles up and down my arms. You know what happens to squealers. I pulled my sleeves down to hide the bruises. Daytimes, the house was full of music. When Papa practiced his violin, the girl stood by his half-closed door. When he was done, she would tiptoe to the music stand and wonder at the funny marks on the lined pages. I could only play a comb kazoo, but my world changed when my sister started piano lessons. From my perch on the stairs, I watched her eyes search the keyboard, then the black marks in a yellow book, back and forth with pained intensity, picking out Yankee Doodle. That book was magic, the way across the mysterious bridge between ignorance and Chopin. One day, when the house was quiet, she climbed up on the hard bench and opened the cover of John Thompson's Easiest Piano Course. She couldn't understand it, so she got Mama to explain. These are notes that mean keys on the piano. Put your finger on this key, middle C. Now look at this note on the staff and play middle C. 2 notes stacked together make a chord. Apart, they sound like a tune. The girl worked through the beginner's book and asked for more. Music became her voice. Skipping ahead, the girl is a teenager. She is sitting outside the locked door of a bedroom at the end of a bad evening with her abusive brother. Later, he strolled out of the room smiling. He closed the door behind him, pulled her to her feet, and dragged her to the car. She sat paralyzed while he softly explained that his date wanted to stay there overnight. He gripped her arms, pressing his thumbs deeply into her bones, up and down methodically. You know what happens to squealers. 1 word, and you die. I ran to my room while he explained to Mama and Papa that I suddenly took sick. All night I talked myself through it. He hadn't actually raped me, had he? So I was okay, wasn't I? But what about his date? What happened behind the locked door? Was she lying there dead right now? Should I call the police? He would kill me. Should I tell my parents? It would kill them. I'd better shut up to survive. Skipping ahead, she leaves home and builds a career in music, but the past remains present to her. She denied the cost of her silence, but more and more often when she took place at the piano, she was back on the hard bench at home, memories drowning every score. The moment her cadenzas blossomed, old bruises surfaced up and down her arms, layer upon layer. Her fingers flailed and skidded until at last she could slip them off the keys and breathe again. Feeling she had no music left to give, she came to a full stop. I went in search of middle C again, this time in the junkyard of my memory. I gleaned old shards and piece by piece translated them into notes on a staff, tones out of key, page after page composing my dissonant life. Every night I lay awake playing the fractured measures in my mind. My memories shrieked like wild night birds, beating their wings on my windows, calling me into the dark. One night, I found the courage to step outside and follow them. The birds circled close around me, quieting. They drew me on over roots and rocks, up hills and down ravines, to a hushed meadow where a tender stream cascaded to a pool. There they whispered me to stop and wait, then vanished into the deep black sky. I sat until the moon rose. Then I slipped through the silver surface of the pool down and down into the darkest waters. The rocks below were burning red, blazing with rage and shame. I gathered them in my arms and in the broad meadow heaped them in a pyre. As the flames sprang up, I howled and stoked them high, then higher, howling until I blew the stars away. Time passed me by, watching the fire burn low and the sighing embers wink out one by one. When at last they fell to ash, I scattered them around the grieving earth, spending my sorrow. The stars returned, a mob of ragged mourners, or so it seemed. Keening and swaying in exquisite despair, they sobbed with rage and laughter. Then I felt the earth begin to roll, its heartbeat rage, and the stars ran mad, dancing new constellations all across the sky. Music roared up everywhere around me, and out of the deepest black, my night birds came soaring back to me in joy. After that night, she improvised cadenzas as if she had a private orchard. Oh, it wasn't Mozart, it was messy. Her variations spun off into rhapsodies, and chord progressions splintered in chaotic fugues. But when she played, the music was hers, the laurels of the heart. And when the wide world's noise confounded her, she stepped out in the dark again and followed the night birds. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you, Maria. Thank you very much. Our last reader will be the winner of the creative nonfiction category. Elizabeth selected Chronicle of My Blood Summer by Ella Latham as the 2021 winner in the creative nonfiction category. Elizabeth writes of Chronicle of My Blood Summer, I felt my heart rate accelerate as I read this essay, from the power of the writing, the visceral yet measured detail, from witnessing such a singular experience. I felt the pain and bewilderment of the author as what was happening to her body was cruel and unfair and beyond her control, and admired how her mind remained fully present, keen, vying for perspective. Ella Latham is a writer and poet from South Carolina. She spent her 20s wandering around the Midwest and New York, both geographically and spiritually. A former labor organizer, paralegal, grad school dropout, literary agency assistant, and bartender, she recently quit her latest day job in construction to return to the South as part of her commitment to doing the work where her roots are and to writing. Chronicle of My Blood Summer will be her first published work. We'll be publishing it in the Peauxdunque Review, and we're very proud of that. She currently lives in Western North Carolina, from which she is joining us today. Ella?
Thank you so much, Tad, and thank you to everyone at the Peauxdunque Review and at Words and Music. I'm thrilled to be here, and thanks also to all of the readers for your powerful work. Very happy to be here with you today. I'm going to read two excerpts from my piece. I'm going to start with the introduction, and then I'm going to skip ahead a little bit to a scene that I hope will set itself. Summer 2020. Pandemic summer, summer of uprisings, summer of record heat. I'm not introducing it as a character. This summer has no agency here. The season of the earth did not make any decisions or cause any harm. I'm setting the scene. It was summer of 2020, and I meant to be in the streets and in community, building and breaking and building. Instead, I spent the summer stitched to my couch by pain. Netflix ran low in the background, and I stuffed my face against my ratty couch cushions, and I howled. I was stitched to my couch because I had an abortion during the first spike in COVID cases in my city. The abortion did not go well. I attempt to say this without blame. I didn't die on the table. I wasn't pregnant anymore. I didn't contract COVID from the cautious but exposed clinic staff. I also didn't stop bleeding for 2.5 increasingly painful, desperate months. It took passing a blood clot the size of my fist to get me a follow-up appointment. On September 18th, a few days after we learned that ICE was forcibly sterilizing women imprisoned in their camps, and hours before we learned that Ruth Bader Ginsburg had died, I had to get the abortion redone. Medically, a second suction procedure. What I gathered, they didn't get it all out the first time, and they had to go back in for the fetus scraps. I spent the summer with my body falling away from me. I longed and yet was dead weight. I reeled with the blood, dizzy with deep exhaustion. My body fell away from me in blood, and it fell further away from me and further out of me every day. My days, my time evaporated, were endless. Were a nightmare of the clock and a nightmare of the tumbling dominoes of events. There was nothing to do but look. Nothing I could do with even my body, my enemy. My energy contracted like internal muscles, left only enough room. It was enough, and yet it was just enough. What counted as just enough from the starting block that was my little corner of the world before the pandemic hit? I held on to my shitty but salaried job, and therefore my health insurance, by the skin of my resentful former labor organizer teeth. I cooked meals for myself, especially summer vegetables, raised by friends or a local farm. In this, I behaved like any good American, operating under the delusion that I could fix it by consuming something of a higher quality. That if I put better food into my body, the rest would take care of itself. I consumed horrifying event after horrifying event through my eyes, through my phone screen, through streams of the endless internet. I had feelings about these events, and sometimes I said words about them, but I didn't succeed in doing anything about them. I paid my bills. I didn't get COVID. That wouldn't come until much later. And I bled. I bled a lot. I produced and cleaned up and managed a lot of blood. There were none of the anti-choice picketers I'd been braced for outside the clinic on July 1st. When a meticulously polite gentleman in the building security booth gave me further directions, once he'd finished searching my belongings, wanding my body, and copying down my driver's license number, I thought I'd made it through the hard part. But instead of buzzing me in, the woman behind the glass stopped me as I grabbed futilely at the locked door. "You should know," she said, her gaze steady on me but completely unreadable, "that we've had a staff member here test positive for COVID." "Oh," I said stupidly. "We also have several people who are out sick with symptoms. Everyone who is here today feels fine, but like we've all been around each other." She waved her hands back at the open floor plan visible behind her. "We are still performing procedures here today, or if you'd like, you can reschedule your appointment for later." Later, later, later. The words clanged around in my brain like a terrible runaway bell. Later was the most malevolent word on earth to me in that moment. The only one worse was never. What if there weren't any abortions at all later? My rational brain reminded me that under normal conditions, it would take more time to shut down clinics than it would take to reschedule my abortion, probably. But the hypervigilant, catastrophizing little trauma survivor who I can't quite evict from my mind was drunk with power from repeated pandemic-era vindications. And she was screaming at me that these are not normal times and they are coming for the clinics we have left. And if you don't leave with that fetus out of your body today, you might not get it out till you are forced to carry that child to term, and then you'll have a goddamn baby that is now a human being you'll have to do something about. I guess I'm fine with it, I said, with doing it today. I meant to add, if you're fine with it, or thank you for being here, but I didn't. And then I felt terribly guilty for making her still be at work during a pandemic. And then I wanted to apologize for wanting to still get the abortion. But it was too late. She buzzed me in, and someone else was giving me temperature checks and extra screenings, and then the sonogram and the counseling session, all while being shuttered from one waiting room to another, waiting all day for a 10-minute procedure. Normally, I don't mind a wait. I was hyper aware as I waited that I was in a clinic where all the workers had known exposures during a pandemic, and I was grateful to still be there. But with each extra medically unnecessary step, knowing this was all legally designed to make the process as unpleasant for us all as possible, I got madder and madder. I split hours between two desolate waiting rooms with most of the chairs removed, leaving us languishing at a safe distance of 6 feet or more apart. By the time I could finally have the actual abortion, I had nearly split myself in two, toggling back and forth between anger at the people outside the clinic walls responsible for this and intense rushing gratitude and guilt towards the few overworked staff members there that day, and me sitting there dumbly wishing there was anything at all that I could say to them. There were red flags. The abortion itself didn't feel like all that much. I took a couple of extra deep breaths. I grit my teeth. When the doctor asked whether I wanted silence or distraction, I chose distraction. She chattered away admirably while she performed the procedure. But when she took the tray full of fetal tissue and blood out for inspection, she didn't come back for a long time. The assistant with me got visibly anxious at how long it was taking. She went out to check twice. When she told me all was well and I could get dressed, I didn't believe her. When the doctor came to check on me in the recovery room, she barely slowed down while walking by. She didn't meet my eyes as she asked me how I was feeling. I've learned the hard way to avoid self-recrimination for how I've handled navigating the American medical nightmare. I try to constantly add to my arsenal of strategies without losing sight of the fact that I shouldn't have to have these strategies just to access the bare minimum of medical care. I try to remember that healthcare workers, especially during a pandemic, are doing heroic work in a system that's not set up with the well-being of humans as its primary concern. I try beyond that to remember that people who work in abortion clinics must face stress and challenges going about every single task on every single workday that I can't imagine. In this case, I try to remember that I don't know all the information or what went through their minds when they chose not to tell me whatever it was that kept the doctor from giving me the all clear for so long. I also don't know how new fears might have affected doctor-patient communication that day, how bad the outbreak was, how sick their colleagues were, how each person there was managing their own combination of worry and fear and confusion. But if I hadn't felt so guilty over my very presence in the clinic, not for reasons of internalized misogyny, or so I'd like to think, not because all those nebulous but very real and powerful haters out there wanted me to flagellate myself, but because it was a pandemic and much of the staff was sick, would I have stopped the doctor? Would I have been more assertive, pushed her to answer my questions instead of avoiding my eyes? Would I have learned something about what took her so long? Whether there were concerns, symptoms to watch for. It was only later that I realized how many people this must have happened to. This or something, sans pandemic, very much like it. Shame, guilt, a vague feeling of wrongness, all of this encourages women to refrain from asserting our needs in medical situations, in all situations. How much worse this must be for a person struggling with their decision for any reason, with all that guilt and shame inflicted on them from the outside. That's where I'll stop. Thank you.
Thank you, Ella. That is just such a wonderful piece. And that concludes our presentation of readings from the winners and runners-up from the 2021 Words and Music Writing Competition. I want to thank everybody who read today. I want to thank everybody who entered these categories in 2021. Every year, the entries get better, and every year it gets more difficult to choose finalists to send to our final round judges, but every year we feel more and more pride in what we're sending to those final round judges, because it is all such excellent work. And it's the work that needs doing. So thank you all for doing it, and we'll see y'all again next year.
Hi. We are going to take a quick break. We will come back in 11 minutes with a panel discussion on writing history in graphic novel form. Thank you again to Tad and our partners at the Peauxdunque Review, and thank you and congratulations to all the readers and runners-up. It was a pleasure to spend this time with you. Bye.